Today is May 30th, 2019, meaning that 5 years ago, yesterday, Mario Kart 8 was initially released for the Wii U, this is obviously, and so, to celebrate that 5th year anniversary of the game, I'm putting together a whole week of Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe based content, respectively. So that means that from Thursday to Wednesday, you're going to have a upload based around Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe every single day. So at that, today's video is actually centralising around a top 10, so I'm going to combine both Skylanders and Mario Kart together for, since Mario Kart 8's release, 2 additions have been made to the Skylanders franchise in the form of Superchargers Racing and regular old Superchargers, both of course on Nintendo platforms, which for Wii U is a part of, obviously. I mean, like, it's a forgotten Nintendo console, but it's a Nintendo console all the same. So in other words, there is no denying that Mario Kart 8 and Skylanders Superchargers both have similarities in some regards, and the regard we're going to be talking about in this specific top 10 is for tracks. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 most similar Skylanders Superchargers and Mario Kart 8 tracks, and this is specifically Mario Kart 8. So if it's in, say, Mario Kart Wii, it does not count towards this list. Although, if it's a retro track in Mario Kart 8, then it does count. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the list, because I just gave you plenty for a drew, and that's enough of that for the moment being anyways. Coming in at number 10, we have Tick-Tock Clock compared to Clock Rock. Now, first of all, how dare they utilise the same exact word within their naming, clock. Ugh, you almost think that the two tracks are based off that theming, which is where the similarities really come into play between these two tracks. They both have the similar theme of clocks. And clearly Clock Rock is ripping this off, because Tick-Tock Clock originated in Mario Kart DS, which came out in 2005, 10 entire years before Superchargers. But even then, Tick-Tock Clock isn't original, because it's a rip-off of the stage from Super Mario 64, which came out even before that. Ripping off a rip-off is not cool, Skylanders Superchargers. Not cool, man. But anyways, apart from that, as I've already said, with the theming, the similarities end there. So sure, they both have clocks as their themes, but they utilise the clock theme very, very differently to make each of them feel original in their own rights. Because Tick-Tock Clock has you racing inside a clock, whereas Clock Rock uses clocks to adjust time, so that then for tracks, aesthetics and setting change respectively. So you go from the present to the future and vice versa. So really, these two tracks can't get any lower on the list because of just how different they are, despite utilising the same theme and the same word in the name. But moving on to number 9, we have Water Park and Panther Castle Water Park, which, if you guys thought that stealing names from Mario Kart 8 tracks wasn't bad enough beforehand, is even worse here, because of course, you know, the whole second part of a name of a Superchargers track you see below is the full name of the top track, which, you know, first of all just ain't right. And once again, the names are there to emphasise the fact that they have similar themes and the fact that they are both themed after water-based amusement parks. But really what makes these tracks more similar than the previous two tracks is the fact that this theme and execution is practically the same. Sure, whilst the two utilise different rides and have fairly different aesthetics, both of them are still majority water-based. And that reflects in their gameplay, because of course you have underwater racing in Mario Kart 8 and sea-based racing in Skylanders Superchargers. So really, the similarities here are more obvious than previously, but still, the tracks are very different in terms of their layout as such, so that's why they don't get any lower than number 9. So moving on to number 8, we have Dolphin Shoals and Tropic Plunder. Now what's similar about the two of these is the setting, because they both really have an exotic based setting. And once again, they're both water-based. In fact, Dolphin Shoals is the most water-based track in the whole of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, as is Tropic Plunder. But really, the layouts of these tracks and the similarities found there is what pushes it to number 8 on the list. Because in Dolphin Shoals, you can see in the preview below that you have boost pads, which you temporarily jump out of the water for to boost into. And in Skylanders Superchargers, you have a mechanic where you can dive under the water and then launch yourself back up. And if you do that, you can dive underwater to evade attacks and then launch yourself back up. So that then, once you go back on top of water, you can speed boost past. And not to mention, Tropical Plunder also has speed boosts in the form of rings. At least I believe it do. I could be wrong by that. But regardless, the fact that both of these tracks have a layout to where you're underwater and then you jump out of the water to go into a speed boost and then go back underwater again is very similar, even if in Superchargers it is a choice on whether you do that or not. So yes, the two have similar layouts and similar settings, but really they're not as similar as number 7 on our list, Mount Wario and Frozen Fossil Festival. Now, what makes these two tracks similar, first of all, is their setting, because they're both ice-based. And second of all is their track layout. Now, whilst the track layouts are very different, with the exception of the split paths, because both of these tracks do indeed feature split paths, Mount Moray where you go into the forest, and Frozen Fossil Festival where you can choose which path of the fossil you want to take, for the right or the left one, mind you. Sure, so that layout is similar. What I really meant by that is the checkpoint system. So rather than having 3 laps that are the exact same, these levels utilize checkpoints where each lap is unique to the last. And the idea of the track having checkpoints rather than laps is evident in both of these tracks, making them similar in that regards. So really, if the ice theming similarity ended at that, then these tracks wouldn't even need to worry about being on the list. But the fact that they take it that extra little bit further and have checkpoints in place and split paths makes it enough for both of these tracks to share the number 7 slot. But as for number 6, we have Wario's Gold Mine compared to Panther Castle Raceway. Now, first of all, we have the most different naming so far. Like, seriously, none of these words that they use even begin with the same letter, which is great. But they are, however, much more similar than previous tracks on the list, which is why it's made number 6 and none of those previous numbers. And really, it's the previews you see before you that prove that. So first of all, these tracks are both themed after some rich person that has bought them out. So Pandagast is rich and has bought himself a theme park. And this is the raceway portion of that theme park. Whilst Wario is rich and has bought himself a gold mine. So yes, they're both in dedication to rich people who have bought out these locations, but really where these tracks are similar is their groundwork. Both of them utilize train tracks, as you can see. But really the similarities start to begin when the utilization of the train tracks are both similar in the regards that they're a bit hectic, you know, they defy gravity in several different ways, have several twists and turns which are completely unrealistic and keep the pace of the tracks moving forward constantly. So really that's what adds a further level of similarity between the two tracks, the fact that they literally use tracks for these tracks, and these tracks defy gravity in several different ways by being all sorts of twisty, turny, hectic, chaotic messes, you could say. But moving on to number 5, 2 tracks which are far more similar than before. We have Sherbet Land and Frozen and Trolley Olympic Village even. And what makes these two similar, first of all, is the setting. They're both ice-based tracks, which, you know, you can't really have a racing game without ice tracks, so I don't blame the similarity there. But what I can blame the similarity for is the fact that both of these tracks, first of all, have, like, villages. In the background, at least. You can't exactly race in the villages, but you can see them in the background, even if Sherbet Island's village is very different aesthetically, with it being very ice-based and igloo-based rather than building-based. But really, for similarities for these tracks, reasons why they are where they are is the fact that the cakes in Trolley Olympic Village, whilst they don't hurt you, unlike the little ice guys you see in the preview at the top right there for Sherbet Land, whilst they don't hurt you, they still look similar, at least to me they do, because they both have white colouring as such, they both like hover slightly, and so really, them both being a part of a track are similar, despite the fact that they have differences to where one is damaging towards your race and one helps your race. But really, the true similarities come into form when you look at the skiing chompy on the bottom preview right there, because Sherbet Land also has skiing hazards which slow you down just like the skiing chompies. The only difference is that those are Shy Guys, but these are both classic icons of their respective franchises. Like Shy Guys are very common in Mario, likewise for chompies in Skylanders. So really having the skiing hazards are very similar between the two tracks, which is why it's as low as number 5 on the list right here. But still, more similar yet is Wild Woods with Robo-Mill Forest. Now, both of these tracks have watermills. Waterfall. Geez, similar names. But anyways, both of them have waterfalls, but they use them very differently, because Wild Woods isn't your traditional waterfall because it's not as sharp of a gradient in terms of a waterfall. In fact, it's more of a water stream there to give you speed, whereas a watermill in Robo-Mill Forest is purely aesthetic based and doesn't affect your gameplay in any way. But they still have those, and they're both set in a forest, so they are very similar in and of themselves. But really what adds more similarity to these tracks is that in the top you can see boost pads on the lily pads, and basically if you miss these boosts you go into the mud and get slowed down. Robo-Mill has this similar based idea where you have logs and saws all around the place, and if you don't use the boost pads to either get past them quickly or evade them altogether, then basically it can be highly damaging towards your race by not utilising those bounce pads in the best way possible. So the fact that they both use bounce pads to create more immersion into the track, because not using them can mess you up otherwise, is a similar thing between the two of them, which is why they are as low as number 4 on the list right here. But moving on, for a bronze medal, we have the most similar tracks yet. Cloud Top Cruise and Cloud Factory, returning to the fact that they both use the same word in their names. How dare they? Like, seriously, Cloud Factory, you have several different words for cloud, and you just happen to use cloud. Be more original with your naming, come on. But really what's so similar about these tracks are the ends of them. Both of these tracks, like when you start off a race, kind of have a calm before the storm feel, with the fact that they are very relaxing, quite easy type tracks. But then you hit the cannon sections on both of them. In Cloud Factory, it's still a cannon-based system, even if you do dive for it. But really, after the cannon, you get to the storm part. You get to the part where there's lightning, tornadoes, everything running rampant, and it's chaos. And you can risk hitting these storm elements for the sake of a boost pad to gain time. The fact that both of these have the exact same ending show that they are very similar tracks, and that's why they get a bronze medal. So moving on to number 2, we have Sweet Sweet Canyon. Man, what is it with Mario Kart tracks like having alliteration in their names? Well, both alliteration and repetition. Because, you know, Sweet Sweet Canyon is only one of Mario Kart 8 tracks to utilise this. There's also Dry Desert. But going back to Temple of Boom, which is the stage we're comparing this to, actually now that I've mentioned Dry Desert, Temple of Boom has a similarity to that because it has a pharaoh in it. But apart from the pharaoh, really, that's where those similarities end. So moving on to purely Sweet Sweet Canyon and Temple of Boom, once again their settings are very similar, both utilising sweets and similar shortcuts, because of course chocolate acts as off-road in both of these tracks, so you can boost over for chocolate in order to gain shortcuts and, well, in order to gain seconds upon the other racers, which classifies as a shortcut all the same. But really, what makes these tracks more similar than most is the fact that they both feature cannons in a way. Like, you can actually see one of the cannon sections in the preview of Temple of Boom. But to add the cherry on top of the cake, quite literally, they both have split paths even, and the layout for these split paths are far more similar than that mentioned in Mount Wario and Frozen Fossil Festival, with the fact that they're both very simple split tracks, which is very similar in layout, might I also add, and the fact that, you know, you go down one, and then, say you go down one that's to the left, you emerge once the split paths realign upon the right, because they're a bit twisty-turny. That's similar in both the tracks, I believe, don't quote me on that. But yeah, that very similar layout with the split tracks, and then the similar theming, and the fact that they both utilise the same mechanics in the cannons, just really go to show how similar these tracks are, which is why they gained the silver medal between them. But really, number one, you can't get more similar in terms of tracks between these two games than Dragon Driftway and Dragon Spine, which both utilise the same name. Again, like, honestly, they should have called it Dragon Drift Spine, because then they would have, like, been even more derivative, and that's kind of just what these tracks prove about Skylanders Superchargers, you could say. But really what makes these tracks so similar is for utilization of gameplay mechanics. So for Dragons and Dragon Spine have elements, and the elements, whilst you race on their back, affects how you drive. Whereas Dragon Driftway, it teaches you new mechanics. So very casual players may not have known how to drift before now, and most of the tracks in Mario Kart 8 are very pandering towards that casual audience, to where you don't actually need to drift to win on those. But Dragon Driftway, if you do not drift, it is so simple you will not win. So the fact that it teaches you drifting, again, is a key mechanic, which it kind of gives you a tutorial on, a bit like Dragon Spine. So it really affects your gameplay in different ways if you've not learnt to drift before that moment. So the fact that they both utilize like different mechanics than what normal tracks do, with the elemental roads for Dragon Spine and the drifting in Dragon Driftway, or the heavy dependency on drifting on Dragon Driftway, even that is similar in and of itself. And then there's also the fact that both of these are dragons, and on both of them you ride on the back of a dragon. Honestly, you don't get any more like obvious than that. Like, seriously, the only reason why you're on the backs of dragons on both these tracks to begin with is because it's flipping awesome. So if it's awesome in Dragon Driftway, of course Dragon Spine is going to rip it off and do the exact same thing. And worse yet, both of these tracks aren't just based off dragons, they're based off things in their own respective franchises. For Dragon Spine is based even off the dragon in Cloud Breather's Crag, whereas for Dragon from Dragon Driftway is based off Gobblegut from Super Mario Galaxy. So the fact that they utilise characters from their own respective franchises and use that as a theme for an entire track, it just emphasises their similarities. But above all, these two games are very, very different in the ways of how they play, even if they do have similar tracks. This top 10 was just for a bit of fun. It's not to call out Superchargers for being a rip-off of Mario Kart 8, because in reality, it's the complete opposite scenario of that, to where Superchargers has very few rip-off elements of Mario Kart 8. Really, this track right here is the biggest rip-off that it has, and even then it's so minor that I can really moan about it outside of a joke. In case you could tell from my tone, I have been joking this entire time. But really, that does it for this top 10, all disclaimers aside. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the future, where I'll be counting down the top 10 reasons why Skylanders Superchargers does not rip off Mario Kart 8, which is what I was kind of alluding to beforehand. But until such a moment, peace.